$2 million to $5 million in cap space that they're saving by cutting Henry Anderson. And here we get to the man that I want to talk about, Kyle Van Noy, getting cut by the Miami Dolphins. This move will save nearly $10 million in cap space. But this, out of all of them, out of the list that I just gave you, and of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm probably going to cut it right before I'm talking about Kyle Van Noy. I did have a full list on the podcast of cuts that I found extremely notable or interesting, but Kyle Van Noy getting cut by the Miami Dolphins does not make sense to me. He was in his first year of something like a 4-year, $50 million contract, and he really was I don't want to say the heart and the blood of that Dolphins defense, but he was a gigantic part of what the Dolphins were able to do on defense last year, and I don't quite understand this cut. The Dolphins' probably weakest position was at linebacker, apart from Kyle Van Noy, Andrew Van Ginkel. There was really nobody else in the linebacker core that was super solid. Jerome Baker is up and down with his performances. The linebacker core for the Dolphins was really the group on the defense that was holding the defense back. The sacks were fine. The rush was fine. Obviously, Xavier Howard on the edge he was my choice to be Defensive Player of the Year with what he was doing in terms of giving the Dolphins defense an extra push with all of his interceptions. The defense was fantastic for Miami last year. And Kyle Van Noy, earning $15 million last year, if they had him signed at the start of the season, start of the new NFL season, he would have had an additional $15 million. So he's an expensive signing, and I'm pretty sure that's why the Dolphins cut him, is literally just super the price tag that he has on him. But logically speaking, the Dolphins have cap space. I mean, it's not like they're strapped for cash unless they're really going to try and make a splash in free agency. I really can't imagine what the Dolphins would want to chase in free agency besides an offensive lineman and a wide receiver. But with the number 3 overall pick in the draft, you're in prime position to get an offensive tackle in Penei Sewell, but you can also get a wide receiver in Devonta Smith. I mean, the Dolphins have a really good opportunity to fill whatever free agency needs that they have with that number 3 overall pick in the draft. So whether that's improving the offensive line, which was one of the worst in the football league last year, or getting another weapon for Tua Tagovailoa, like, you can address that in the draft. I don't understand the need as to why you are cutting Kyle Van Noy to save $10 million for your cap space, which you're already up there in terms of cap space. You know what? I'm actually going to look this up really quick to get my numbers straight. How much cap space do the Dolphins actually have? Going to go over the cap really quickly. The Dolphins have $31 million in cap space right now. And let me see if Kyle Van Noy is on the roster at this point. I am not seeing him. So this is taking into account the Kyle Van Noy cut. I mean, so even with $31 million in cap space at this point, $21 million in cap space, which is what they would have had prior to that, is really good. That's certainly something that a lot of the teams in the NFL would be wanting. That number is flexible, and that was your number with Kyle Van Noy. Again, just this financially, you can understand why it's intriguing to have $10 more million in cap space. But the Dolphins are in such a good position that cutting Kyle Van Noy just makes no sense financially, and it makes no sense for the structure of your football team. You cut a guy that was part of the culture building. He seemed like he wanted to be there on all accounts. You cut your best player at your worst position group on the defense, so that tells me that the Dolphins might want to draft what's his name out of Notre Dame, Jeremiah Owusu, something like that. He's got a very weird last name. They might want to draft a linebacker with their second first round pick, although I probably would have spent it on somebody a different position group. But regardless of that, I don't know. Can somebody tell me why this would make sense? I'm struggling to find the reasoning in this move for the Miami Dolphins cutting Kyle Van Noy. And I know there's no real take here. It's really just me complaining about a confusing cut, but I'm genuinely trying to find an answer. I'm venting my reasoning and logic to you to try and find reason as to why Kyle Van Noy was cut by the Miami Dolphins. And again, the perception is, man, Kyle Van Noy earned $30 million in his time as a Dolphin, and he gets to choose where he plays next year, and that's not exactly correct. He earned $15 million if he was still on the roster by whatever roster designation day, whatever date that is. He would have been paid an additional $15 million guaranteed, so he's only been paid $15 million guaranteed. The rest of the contract turns into dead money after that. And, now Kyle gets to go play somewhere else. Maybe he goes back to New England. Maybe he goes to, what's a team in need of a linebacker? Maybe he goes to, a place like Detroit or something. So a very confusing cut and these are the type of cuts and money decisions that really keep the teams like the Dolphins at the bottom of the league. Even when it appears like they're going to make jumps and make strides, they make confusing decisions with their personnel. I'm not saying Kyle Van Noy is the best linebacker that ever played, because he certainly isn't. But when it comes to what he meant to that locker room, how dedicated he was, and how committed he was to what Brian Flores was doing in Miami, he was committed to the culture. Sure, his price tag was expensive, but you have the cap space to be able to afford that cap hit, at least for this season. It makes no sense to me. It makes no sense. So I would assume that the Dolphins draft a linebacker in the draft now. I would assume that they probably take the guy from Notre Dame with their 18th overall pick in the draft. And again, makes no sense to me. The Dolphins pretty much had everything that they had available to them to be able to address the needs of the football team in the draft. In the first round, you could draft tackle, you could draft wide receiver in the first round, and pretty much solve the biggest issues that the Dolphins had with their football team last season. And now you're going to need to find another replacement for Kyle Van Noy. And I don't know if there is a free agent linebacker that's going to be as good as Kyle Van Noy that you can sign for a cheaper price that might justify this decision. Again, real head scratcher. And a lot of me talking about this segment is me trying to talk it out with myself and you guys and try and figure out what the hell the Dolphins are doing here. Genuinely have no clue. Very confusing to me. So that was a little bit of a cap casualty recap there on the Hard Headed Sports Podcast. Very confusing. It's very, very confusing. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for watching this segment from the Hard Headed Sports Podcast. You've heard what I've had to say. Now I'm interested to hear what you think as well. If you enjoyed this highlight from the show and want to watch more highlights from the show as they come out after the show's completion, you should definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you're interested in listening to the entire show in its full-length entirety, you should follow the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Anchor. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you all very soon.